Tonight, Congress wants its checks and balances back.
I think people are worried about President Trump's mercurial nature.
Focus grouping the Facebook fallout. And an international chemical weapons watchdog group verified British findings that an ex-Russian spy and his daughter were poisoned by Novichok, a powerful military-grade nerve agent. The report from the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons says a highly concentrated version was used to poison Sergei and Yulia Skripal. A Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson denied the results and demanded proof that the Skripals were not being held hostage.
Публично призываю Великобританию дать информацию, сделать так, чтобы мы могли удостовериться, что российским гражданам ничего не угрожает. Сделать так, чтобы весь мир понял, что эти люди не находятся в заложниках, не участвуют в какой-то страшной манипуляции или игре.
Israel's president, Reuven Rivlin, visited the remains of the Auschwitz concentration camp today to commemorate Holocaust Remembrance Day. But a new survey shows that in the U.S., 41% of adults don't even know what Auschwitz is. The survey, conducted by the Claims Conference, found that almost 80 years later, many Americans lack basic knowledge about the Holocaust. More than a fifth of millennials say they may not have even heard of it. And a third of all adults surveyed think the Holocaust killed 2 million or fewer Jewish people. The Nazis killed an estimated 6 million Jews during World War II. Embattled Missouri Governor Eric Greitens is facing more pressure to resign, including from the state's Senate Majority Leader, after a legislative committee released testimony last night from a woman Greitens had an affair with. She says that he slapped and grabbed her, in addition to taking a naked photo of her without her consent and using it for blackmail. The blackmail allegation has already led to a felony charge against Greitens, and he's scheduled to go on trial next month. Greitens says he won't step down because the accusations are false.
This is a political witch hunt.
Today, the Senate confirmed a former coal lobbyist to be number 2 in charge of the Environmental Protection Agency. Andrew Wheeler is a climate change skeptic who, like his soon-to-be boss Scott Pruitt, wants to dismantle many of the environmental regulations President Obama put into place. Pruitt has been plagued by controversy over his lavish travel habits, and if he resigns, Wheeler would take over the EPA. The Oklahoma Education Association has called off a teacher walkout after 9 days, without getting all the additional funding they were looking for. The group's president, Alicia Priest, said that state lawmakers were, quote, refusing to cross the finish line on providing more money to public education, and that teachers have to face that reality, for now.
Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria.
We'll be coming out of Syria like very soon. Let the other people take care of it now.
It will be met, and it will be met forcefully.
President Trump tweeted this morning that the timing of any potential Syria strike was solely up to him. On Capitol Hill, his Secretary of Defense told House members the administration would be sure to let Congress know, just maybe not beforehand.
So before taking any action, you would report to Congress as to the nature of what that action might be.
I will speak only to the fact that we will report to Congress. We'll keep open lines of communication. There will be notification to the leadership, of course, prior to the attack, but we'll give a full report to the Congress itself, probably as rapidly as possible.
On the Senate side, CIA Director Mike Pompeo, the president's nominee to be Secretary of State, said he believes the White House does have the authority to launch a strike without Congress's permission.
I believe the president has the domestic authority to do that. I don't think that has been disputed by Republicans or Democrats throughout an extended period of time.
Actually, it's disputed mostly by our founding fathers who believe they gave that authority to Congress, and actually they're uniformly opposed to the executive branch having that power.
The 200-year-old dispute won't be settled in time to address the Syria crisis. But many legislators think that it's time to give it another shot.
On September 14, 2001, Congress passed a law authorizing the president to go to war against the people who attacked the United States 3 days earlier.
Senate Joint Resolution 23 is passed.
A little less than 17 years later, that law, known as the Authorization for the Use of Military Force, or AUMF, is still on the books. And presidents are still using it to justify U.S. military action all over the globe. The AUMF is why American military personnel entered Afghanistan in 2001. The AUMF is why 4 American soldiers died in Niger last October. When the government says it's doing something related to the war on terror, it's invoking the AUMF. Some members of Congress say it might be time to check in on this thing and see if it's still doing what Congress intended it to do.
We're now using it to fight wars against multiple groups in a dozen countries. It's lasted far longer than the American public would have expected. The American public might wake up and see somebody being killed in Syria. They could see American troops being killed in Niger. You have to have an authorization that is now fit to the mission.
I know that your bill is still, this new version is still in conversation, but what is yours going to do?
It would authorize continuing military action against the 3 core terrorist groups we've been battling, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban. It would specifically state that this is an authorization against non-state terrorist groups, and you can't use it to justify war against a state, against Syria, against Iran, against whoever.
Senator Tim Kaine, the Virginia Democrat and former vice presidential candidate, has been trying to debate the AUMF since he got to the Senate in 2013. The debate was stalled for years before that. But Kaine says that might be changing now.
I think there's a grave concern that this president will act unilaterally. Also, in his first year in office, he's shot missiles against Syria without coming to Congress for permission. And then in February, there was an airstrike campaign against the Syrian military as part of a skirmish between the Syrian military and the Syrian opposition. The U.S. did airstrikes against them, killed 100 Syrians. Bashar al-Assad's a dictator. There ought to be a consequence for the guy, but he hasn't declared war on the United States.
Wait, so you're saying if the president launched missiles against Syria, as he's threatened to on Twitter, like tonight, that would be illegal?
I think it's an illegal war, absolutely clearly.
Today, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons said it's undertaking a fact-finding mission to investigate the attack on Douma, Syria. OPCW's job is to confirm whether or not chemical weapons have been used, but they can't pin the blame on anyone for it. The group that did have the power to assign blame was dismantled last November after Russia vetoed it at the UN. Vice News spoke to the group's former chief.
My name is Edmond Mulet. I am the former head of the Joint Investigative Mechanism on the use of chemical weapons in Syria. The mechanism was established by a resolution from the Security Council of the United Nations in order to find out who is behind, who is responsible for the use of chemical weapons in Syria. The conclusions are very clear. The government of Bashar al-Assad is responsible for the use of chlorine as a chemical weapon and of the use of the gas sarin. And I have no doubts about that. In 2013, Syria declared the destruction of these chemical weapons, but apparently not all those stocks were destroyed.
الله أكبر استشهدوا جراء قصف بغازات السامة الله أكبر.
And now we had this big incident in Douma. It is a fact that chemical weapons do exist and are being used in Syria. The fact that the Syrian government is using chemical weapons against its own people has a reason, and it makes military sense because the use of chemical weapons instills fear and instills terror on the population, especially on civilians. The strategy of striking and launching bombs or missiles against military bases in Syria is a way to send a message to the Syrian regime that they will pay a price if they continue using chemical weapons. So far, they have not understood that message.
Mark Zuckerberg may have finished answering lawmakers face-to-face on Capitol Hill, but he and his team have a lot to follow up on. They owe responses to senators and representatives on at least 44 questions. Many Facebook users who watched the testimony still have questions too. Pollster Frank Luntz talked to a group of 21 to 49-year-olds in Denver.
Raise your hands if you use Facebook at least once a day. All of you. Twice a day. All of you. So clearly Facebook matters to you. Okay, by show of hands, how many of you know someone who has eliminated their Facebook account in the last, say, 100 days? So most of you. Did any of you eliminate your Facebook account?
No. I'm considering it.
You're considering it. Anyone else
But I
considering
still
it?
need my business Facebook page.
Me and a lot of people I know have considered deleting it, but if you delete it, what is there to replace it? So yes, it makes it unique.
It's the only way I keep in touch with my family back home, because that is literally the only way. And I could see giving it up very easily at this point, though, but I'd have to find an alternative.
How many of you have actually read, put in the time to read, more than half of Facebook's user agreement? Raise your hands. 0. Do you trust Mark Zuckerberg?
No.
Why not?
He's just like any other human, and you can't have that much power unregulated in the hands of like one CEO. He has, from my mind, little risk of losing his position because the unwillingness of us to change our social media behavior changes nothing of their market share, nothing of their finance fundamentals.
So if they're watching, if the leadership of Facebook is watching this group right now, they're going to say we can do anything. Because they're not going to do anything.
The signal we've been sending for quite some time.
I mean, but that's the problem, right? I think fundamentally, to put the onus, right, on us as users, it misses the point, right? Because in so many ways, like the biggest problem with Facebook isn't that we've been so comfortable giving our data, right? We feel in some ways like maybe we got conned into giving so much of our data out.
You feel you got conned?
A little bit, but let me...
Why not take responsibility? Why blame Facebook?
Well,
you volunteered that information.
Because
they didn't force you to.
Because at the same time, right, we didn't understand what they were doing.
You gave the information.
Yeah.
And you didn't think it could be used? You don't think it could be sold? Everyone wants to blame everyone else. Why don't you take responsibility for what you do online?
I didn't ever think it was a free lunch. I felt like, yeah, they probably track you, and I just didn't think I was that exciting either.
That's how I felt about
Where it was a big deal, like as long as they didn't take my bank information or any of that.
Passwords.
Yeah, exactly. I felt like pretty okay with it.
I just believe in personal responsibility, and I think that when you check off that I accept box, you have to be realistic as to where your information is going. And to be honest with you, I'm not so concerned about whether a political entity gets my information. I'm more concerned when something happens and my credit card information is stolen because my political information is already taken by Facebook.
To me, I am much more worried about the undermining of the elections, and if we want to go even further, not saying we're ringing alarm bells of undermining the democracy, but if we, the stolen political data to me is far more concerning, and to me personally.
Because
you undermine the elections, and that is the first domino in what could be a lot of different things happening.
You can cancel
a
credit card and get your money back. You can't cancel a president.
Today in Washington, the White House and the National Safety Council unveiled a traveling memorial to victims of the opioid epidemic. It's called Prescribed to Death, and it depicts the faces of 22,000 people who died from using prescription opioids in 2015. The crisis has its roots in the late 90s, when drug companies like Purdue Pharma started aggressively marketing opioids to treat chronic pain. Oxycontin has been a huge moneymaker for Purdue, but in February, the company announced it would stop promoting it to doctors. Vice News spoke with one former Purdue sales rep, who's now a chronic pain patient himself.
That would probably knock you out. For me, it just barely takes the edge off.
Oh, come on. Get out of the way, dog.
I've had back pain since I was 14. And I was diagnosed with a degenerative disc. I have a back brace. I've tried traction. I have a TENS unit. I have my own personal ultrasound machine. I have a massage unit that I use. I got to the point where I had surgery. After many, many years of trying lots of different things, gotten to the point where I take the medications daily now.
To deal with his chronic back pain, Michael depends on a large amount of opioids taken throughout the day, including morphine and oxycodone. But this isn't his only experience with opioids. For 15 years, Michael was a top Oxycontin sales representative for Purdue Pharma.
If I could take this off the wall. Got to wipe it off, it's dirty. In 2008, I was the #1 sales rep in the company. And
how many are we talking here?
Well, I want to say it was around 500 salespeople, okay. So something like that, if I recall. This was kind of a creative little tool that they used to have. You pull it out, and on there are some of the more common...
It's got the conversions.
Yeah, conversions on it.
Right.
So if a doctor's got this in his pocket and he's like with a patient, he's thinking, well, you know, I'm going to convert this patient from Percocet. What would be the conversions? At the time that they offered me the job, I was watching TV with my wife, and here's a news report about what? Oxycontin abuse, you know, being highly addictive drug. And so we had to think about that. Like, is this really what we want to do?
I mean, that must be kind of stressful. You've just signed on with this company, and then you flick on the news and somebody's bashing it.
What was interesting when I came on board, I didn't see initially this issue in my territory. But of course, my territory hadn't been worked for a year, so not a lot of people were writing Oxycontin. The first problem and issue I had was with that doctor in Hesperia.
Mike focused his sales on physicians who were already treating pain patients with older, less potent opioids. His job was to get doctors to prescribe Oxycontin, a more powerful pain pill. The more prescriptions they wrote, the more money he made. But these new pills were also popular with less scrupulous doctors.
So I used to call on a doctor in this corner suite right here. Somewhere along the line, he read a book about pain management and decided he became a pain expert.
Read a book?
Yeah, read a book.
Okay.
And so I started calling on him on a frequent basis and talking to him about Oxycontin. He started writing Oxycontin, which at first I thought was a good thing.
Yeah, hey, you're making sales.
I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
It evolved. And eventually when I would come here, we saw the wrong kind of crowd.
What's the wrong kind of crowd?
Well, you know, people don't usually hang out outside of a doctor's office, on the sidewalk, in the parking lot, etc. These were drug seekers. They were here to get prescriptions for narcotics, and they were not pain patients. I was in another city in my territory, and one of the office staff said she got a call from a police officer in Ohio. They caught a guy selling Oxycontin from a prescription bottle, and that doctor's name was on the prescription bottle. Some of these patients will walk through a doctor's office and they'll steal a prescription pad.
Was there anything keeping you from just driving by and looking the other way?
You know, for someone like him, I don't want to get credit for what he's doing. Did patients that I sold Oxycontin to through a doctor get hurt? Oh, I hope not, but I'm sure they did. As a rep, it was heartbreaking to hear from a doctor that they have a patient that is now self-identified as a drug addict because they got started on Oxycontin for their pain. You know, I take these opioids, I don't want to be married to them. I would rather not have to take them. But I've gotten to the point where like I said, I've tried everything. I'm not here to defend Purdue, but they were an easy target. I mean, they revolutionized chronic pain management and long-acting opioid analgesics. They were innovators in that business. Certainly, you know, abusers and diverters were getting their hands on the medication. So yeah, they were widely criticized for what they did. Am I ashamed that I worked for them? Not at all. Because I know that what I did was the right thing.
there are people, I think, who would learn of what you used to do or what you do now and say, this guy's a dope pusher.
I'm sure there would. And I think that it's of course, if you've lost a family member to addiction, I could seriously see how they could say that. But you can't have all of these chronic pain patients suffer at the chance that one person is going to become addicted. And if you're out there and you see me say that and you go, yeah, but I lost my son or daughter or nephew or husband or cousin to addiction, and you'd love to see, all opioids taken away, that's just not a reasonable approach to addressing the problem.
Books are full of facts. The internet is a heaping dumpster fire full of misinformation and bullshit. I'm here to set the record straight on Vicepedia. Nick Offerman, are you uncredited for your police lineup in Police Academy 3? Let me just put that rumor to bed right now. I am not in Police Academy 3. Basically, if anyone has a mustache in history, in film or television or paintings, I get a lot of paintings, they say, is this you? And usually it is. It's only our second go-round and you've already chosen to hurt my feelings. People say a lot of very mean things to me when they see me without facial hair. I remember someone saying, I saw Nick Offerman without his mustache, I vomited and died. I would ask that they consider that the thing they're supposing made them nauseous and ultimately perish is my fucking face that my mom and dad made. This photo was the first official photo of Ron Swanson. Actually, I'm super charmed. I haven't seen it for a long time. The entire series for me was made in this photo when I sort of landed on, this is my attitude. Inexplicably, I've ended up in a lot of memes, my character mainly, Ron Swanson. Perhaps a meme that I would recommend would be something like, click on this. Get off of the internet, or just go look at a sycamore tree. When people say, what's the difference between you and Ron Swanson? I could show them this photo and say, I'm coquettish in a way that Ron Swanson could never imagine. Fuck. That's Kafka-esque. I usually prefer a boxer brief. I'm glad I've been given a nice pooper. 0% are convinced that Nick Offerman has never tried drugs before. I believe that would indicate that you are picking up what I'm putting down. But I have to have a good 3-day weekend if I'm gonna pull the bong out. Does Nick Offerman really play the saxophone?
That's Vice News Tonight for Thursday, April 12th. Season 6 of Vice on HBO continues tomorrow night.
We can know exactly what happened in every second, in every corner of the city in real time.
And I just got busted for jaywalking with facial recognition technology.
The technology is starting to appear just about anywhere you can imagine. You can also pay for your food with your face. It even curbs waste of toilet paper at public bathrooms.
This is all I get for the next 9 minutes.